Welcome to the Embodied Enlightenment podcast, your podcast for a healthier, happier, more soul-fueled you. I'm your host, Carrie Merriam, here to guide you to reclaim your power to live your ultimate life. Your journey to expanded conscious awareness begins right now. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Embodied Enlightenment podcast. Thank you so much for being here. If you are an entrepreneur or in a relationship with an entrepreneur or both, you are an entrepreneur that is in a relationship, this is the podcast for you. My soul sister, Amy, is on the other side of the Ethernet. Amy, thank you so much for being here.
Having me.
Yeah. And Amy Stefanik is a wife, she's a mother, she's a published author, a speaker, and alongside with her husband, Matt, she's been riding this wave of the entrepreneurship roller coaster since 2002. And she's the creator of The Entrepreneur's Wife, whose aim is to help strengthen and encourage the entrepreneur family. Through The Entrepreneur Wife, Amy coaches the concept of one shared vision in regards to the entrepreneurship journey. Again, thank you everyone so much for joining us, and Amy, such a pleasure. So good to reconnect with you.
I know, it's awesome. So awesome.
What I love about this one shared vision mentality and concept is it really can be applied to anyone in a family dynamic. Whether you are just starting off with a new partner and that is your family, or you're in a mature relationship that you've been with someone for 40 years and you have a slew of children and grandchildren, right? Like it's this combination of one energy. I mean, you can even think about it as a business in and of itself. It's this one commonality and goal to help solidify and move individuals forward in alignment. So let's get into that, right?
Let's do it. Mm-hmm.
So speaking of alignment, what I think is so powerful about your message and why I'm just so proud of you, interesting in and of itself how we perceive individuals, but being an entrepreneur myself and you being an entrepreneur yourself, right? And being a feminine, there is this essence of like surrendering, right, to the individual that you're in a partnership with. And it doesn't have anything to do with gender, right? It doesn't have nothing to do with gender, but your husband is masculine, right? So having that masculine energy lead in business, but maybe not lead within the relationship, and how that can cause fragmentation and a lot of wounds to surface within the individual receiving that, right?
Yeah.
So what got you excited, I guess, about supporting the dynamic of the relationship and creating that unification?
Yeah, I mean, Matt and I have been together for 17 years. I mean, he's always been an entrepreneur. He just started his entrepreneur journey when we got together. And so writing that with him and watching him figure it out, not only watching him figure it out, but living it with him, the highs and lows, the dips, the valleys, the mountains, like succeeding and then losing. And you go through all that and you kind of figure out that maybe there is some things that you need to fix within yourself, right? It's the way that you react to certain things. Like maybe that's an old thing that's surfacing that has nothing to do with what's currently happening, but it's something that you didn't deal with, 3 years ago. And so when we got to this place in our relationship where, we were not being kind to each other because we hadn't took time to heal from past hurt, past falls, in the dips, because the dips, when you're living on top of the mountain and everything's great, you can be your kindest, best self, right? Because you don't have the stress of life, holding you down. But it's in the valleys where you show up in your true self. And if you have work to do, then it comes out, right? And so when it comes out, it can come out as venom, and you can do and say things that are really hurtful. But when you're on this entrepreneur journey, you don't take time to heal from that, because it's like, we got to go, let's pick up, let's go, let's move. And so what happens is you get to these places where you're like, oh crap, I'm feeling hurt and resentment from 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 months ago, whatever it is. And we got to that place where we were reacting in certain ways that didn't even match the current state. But because we had been together for so long and there had been so many bruises and bumps, we hadn't healed ourselves. And so we came to the cliff, I guess, of, do we want to get a divorce? And so Matt and I separated for 3 months. And when we got back together, I realized that for so many years I felt alone. Like no one understood me. I was either defending or offending the business. And what I mean by that is I was either saying, no, he's not going to get a job. You don't understand. Everything's going to be fine. Or I was saying, do you really think you should get a job? Like, this sucks. I don't want to, so you're that fine line, that riding the fence. And so it got really tough. And so I realized, if I am going to survive personally, I need to jump all in. And that's what I did. I jumped all into the business. I understood it inside and out. If someone asked me, then I could speak the business like it was my own business. And I started going to events. And when I started going to events and speaking to other entrepreneurs, they all would say, you have to talk to my wife. If she would only hear your story, she would understand she's not alone. Mm-hmm. And I started doing research on what is there out there for the entrepreneur's wife, because there are podcasts, there's events, there's magazines, there's books, there's so much out there for the entrepreneur, but there's nothing to equip the entrepreneur's wife for the journey that she's about to embark on. And so I decided that's what I was going to do, platform for the entrepreneur's wife, where she could come, she could share space with others to speak her language so that she didn't feel like she was on an island.
Well, thank you so much for doing that. I don't have an entrepreneur's wife yet. Who knows what the universe will unfold, but I just think it's so needed. And I think, first of all, thank you so much for your vulnerability and sharing your stories and your struggles. I think, number one, that's amazing, because so many of us don't actually want to say, hey, I've done a lot of work, because I had to really look at where I was and where my relationship was and decide to take responsibility and heal, as well as my partner having to decide to take responsibility and heal. So I fully commend that, and I'm just so appreciative for you sharing that. What I also heard from that and love is this, again, concept of isolation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's something that we all struggle with. And even though that you felt really isolated, Matt probably also felt really isolated, because as an entrepreneur, you're bombarded by so much pressure that you want to come home and you want that to be your sanctuary. You want that to be your reset. You want that to be your place of recharge and renewal energy. But when you're with someone for 17 years, like you said, and you're going at such a fast pace because you're in this hustle, that it's just suppressed and suppressed and suppressed. So how do you work with women or entrepreneurs themselves in first discovering that suppression and creating wholeness around it?
Well, I think that, the first step in that process is for them to see who they really are. Because when I'm speaking to an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur spouse, they are telling me all about what the other person is doing wrong and how someone else is hurting them. And so it's a shift in mindset of no one's doing anything to you. It's all on how you are reacting to what's going on around you. And once they can get their mind wrapped around that, then they can start looking inward, because it is not outward work. It's all inside work. You have to realize that, every day you show up is imperative to the journey. Right. And so, it's an awakening in that sense. It's complete 100% responsibility, which is very difficult for any human being to wrap their mind around, because we all want to justify our actions, right? We all want to say, well, I wouldn't have yelled at her and told her that she needed to leave if she wouldn't have, I hear that all the time. I wouldn't have if they wouldn't have. Yeah. And so it's about realizing that if you are going to get to a place of marital bliss and be happy, you have to be happy and realize that it's 100% you. It has nothing to do with them. You have to be responsible for everything that you do every single day.
I love that. Powerful. Take responsibility, people, right? No matter if you're dating an entrepreneur or not, like taking full responsibility of how you're reacting and what's coming up for you. And if there is a need that's not being fulfilled, which it sounds like is kind of where I want to go next, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you find is the primary need that entrepreneur's wife are not receiving? And how do you help maintain that equanimity? Like if you're just working with the one aspect of the relationship, right? How can you help bridge that conversation or that union with the other aspect, which might be the entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, you take a complete business approach to it. I mean, okay, so you are lacking in some way in your life. You feel like you're not getting your love language met. And so when I sit down with the entrepreneur's wife, we go through a series of tests, really, like, what is your love language? What is your personality type? Like, how do you react to things? Because we've all heard it for years. Communication is key, right? Communication. But if you don't have the knowledge behind how to communicate with someone, then you can't communicate with them.
Or the awareness.
Right, exactly. So who are you communicating with? Like, who are you? And it's like, okay, so my love language is words of affirmation. And so if I am not receiving that, then you can buy me gifts, you can rub my back, you can do all the other love languages, which is great. We all need all of those things, but you aren't feeling like you're loved because your language isn't being met. And so understanding your personality type, understanding, who you are and how you show up and why you're reacting a certain way. So once you gain that knowledge just for yourself, like, okay, I'm reacting this way because I have a tendency to be this, then I tell them to do the same thing with their spouse. So what's your husband like? What's his love language? What's his personality type? How is he showing up and why is he showing up that way? And then I ask them to exchange the information. And so once they do that and they understand, like, for example, Matt's a rebel. I know I can't go to Matt and say, we need to do this, because he'll look at me and be like, we don't need to do anything. I mean, he will completely shut me down. And so I've had to learn how to communicate with him in a way that he understands, right? That we can get to a clear communication and he will feel comfortable and I will feel comfortable with both of our needs being met.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. It is. It's very involved, and there's so many layers to it, and people don't realize that Matt and I were just talking about this the other night. We looked at every single love language, every single personality type, and it all boils down to consideration. Are you being considered? We all want to be loved, respected, and validated. That's just human nature. But are you being considered by your spouse, your significant other, someone that you're walking this journey with? Do they consider you? Do they say, hey, I know I need to get this podcast done, but you look really upset. So let me show you. Let me consider you for a second and stop and say, what's going on? Are you okay? And switch it over. Like, that your significant other has to go get this podcast done. Could you take a beat and say, we'll talk about this when time is up, when you're done doing what you're doing? And it boils into every area of life. Are you being considerate? Are you treating your significant other like you would treat your best friend? And usually that's no. Like, you would never do and say some of the things that you say to your best friend that you say to your husband or your wife. It just is. It is a thing.
I think that's because we probably wouldn't ever say anything to our best friend that we say to ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, it's the most vital, the darkest things that you think about yourself that you say internally. The person that you love the most also hears them sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really your partner.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they say that your partner is your mirror, right?
100%.
So, things come up inside of you that are triggered by your partner, and it's just anytime something bubbles up inside of me, I say, okay, thank you for this. I know this is a place that I need to continue to work on. And so anytime that I'm like, oh, I'm being triggered, I'm going to like a really bad place, want to like say really mean things. Then I realize that, okay, that's not work that he needs to do, because his journey is his, and his healing is his healing, and his, work is his work. It has nothing to do with me. And so a lot of times partners say, well, I'm not going to do all the work. If they're not working on the relationship, then I'm not working on the relationship. And that's just such a backwards way of thinking. You have to do your part regardless of what they're doing.
I was actually going to ask that. That was going to be my next question, is like, after you work with people and, give them the consideration, do a lot of people go, well, I'm out of the relationship?
No, I mean, yeah, there have been a lot, surprisingly enough, there have been a lot of people that I've been involved with, a lot of couples that are now divorced, but that's also their journey. That's also, their path and where they need to go. But I think that, if we can get to a place where we stop looking so out at, I need someone else to fulfill me. I need someone else to make me happy. I need someone else to do this in order for me to live my best life. And you realize it all comes within. I mean, because people think that once you get married, you're one, right? You're one unit, you're of one. And you're not. You're two individuals with your own wants, needs, desires, walking a path together. And you have to stop looking at your husband as just a husband and look at them as an individual. I look at Matt as Matt. He's Matt with his own stuff going on. And sometimes I have to say, I know you're going through that, but I'm going to have to step over here and walk for a minute to give you space to figure it out. And it's hard to do because you live together, you make decisions together, and you're always together. And so it's easy to get in that mindset of we are just one person, and you're not.
Yes, Jai sister. I love it. If there is one message that's coming through you right now that you want to share to the world, or to specifically the entrepreneur wife, what would that be?
I think that what I felt this morning actually in meditation was that as an entrepreneur's wife, the journey isn't difficult. Being married to an entrepreneur is not difficult. It's how we show up to the journey that creates difficulty in our lives. So you have to make a decision every day to wake up and not pick up your pen and paper and continue your victim story. You have to say, okay, today is my day. I'm responsible for today, no matter what's going on around you. You could be in financial ruin. You could, have all kinds of stuff going on. The businesses could be a complete failure, but you are responsible for how you show up to that mess. And you can either go into it with, a high spirit and high energy and love, and realize that none of it really matters, and that you are going to be the best you no matter what, and nothing's going to shake you. Or you can continue to write your victim story and hold on to it with like a death grip, which is not going to serve you.
Yes. And if there are some women out there, or even some men that are like, help, find you.
Well, you can find me at theentrepreneur'swife.com. Everything that I do is on there. So my book, my coaching, anything that I do, any kind of masterminds or events that I do are all on there. So if you go to theentrepreneur'swife.com, you can find all my stuff.
Yes. And make sure you go out and check out her book too. I mean, obviously the teachings that you're providing are universal, right? It's not just the entrepreneur. I think it's really anyone that wants to create deeper unification within any relationship, whether that's business or a romantic partnership, that we could gain so many nuggets and wisdoms from your teaching. So go check out her book. Go check her out on the website. And thank you all so much for tuning in to the Embodied Enlightenment podcast. Amy, love you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you everyone for listening. Go over, do us a favor, give us some 5-star reviews. That'd be amazing on iTunes, and share this with anyone that you think would resonate with the message. Until next Thursday, this has been Carrie. Ciao.
I'm Carrie Merriam, and you've been listening to the Embodied Enlightenment podcast. You can follow Embodied Enlightenment on Instagram or join the private Facebook group as well. You can also follow me, Carrie Miriam, on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you've liked this podcast, please go over to iTunes or YouTube and comment, subscribe, and leave a review. And if you think someone could benefit from the teachings within this episode, please feel free to share it. Stay tuned next week for another conscious conversation. And as always, thank you so much